Hey, welcome. This is True Divine, and I'm Jennifer Roberts, and it's another sort of pondering writing on the wall. So I went into the yesterday, which I think was a writing on the wall stroke reading. Can't quite remember. So I've thought about more and more overnight, leading by example. I try to do this with my children. I try to do this. I recognize when I haven't led by example well, and go in as quickly and as drastically as I can over a gradual period of time to rectify any seeds that I might have dropped from my tree into the subconscious of my children, so that they don't repeat history, so that they don't repeat my lackings, that they can build on my lack through the experience I've had through my lack and the experience they've maybe had witnessing it in whatever direction that is or been. And like everybody, there's been plenty. Instead of it demising them and or bringing them to their demise in a similar pattern, so that it works to be then nourishment, it works to be compost, it works to be sludge that actually feeds into their greatness. The same way, you know, we peel a vegetable, we keep it aside, compost it, you know, it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't. And that's how a lot of our lacking experiences as adults, you know, it can be perceived. And that's where I say a lot of healing can look to the outside, and it puts people a lot off from doing it. Inner healing is messy, you know, there's tears, there's overextended mucous membranes, let's put it, you know, there's laughter, there's smiles, there's peaks and troughs in it. And so I try and get the best out of any situation, and this is where I get the best out of the situations. This is where I free myself from guilt. Sorry, my throat's been a bit scratchy the last couple of days, but I free myself from guilt by not living in guilt, which is a killer for a parent, for anyone, but for a parent is a killer. Not living in guilt because of my failures or places of lack, in leading by example, working hard to liberate myself from it by liberating them from it and creating it into a foundation rather than a sinkhole, you know, that's going to eventually come from underneath them in different experiences that they go through throughout their life. So leading by example, and right now we find ourselves in a position, and this is where I've been thinking, and I love a protest. I love protesting the narrative. I love discussion. I love dialogue. I love people challenging me. I love to challenge others. Thought-provoking. I love innovation. I love the intelligent people that have gone before me and the intelligent people I can see coming up after me, and get into awe of them. I love the funny. I love the mind. I love the words, the thoughts. Makes sense. I'm a lot of air, a lot of hot air, but the, you know, air nonetheless. And so leading by example, where we've gotten to now, where there's a lot of protests, which very cleverly were surmised alongside riot and behavior. That was clever because now everybody hears the word protest, and it immediately goes to they'll protest too much. If anybody even stands on a line with a sign, it's too much, because in people's minds now, protest means riot. Protest means idiots harming the very people that they live amongst. Protest means violence. And so this is where I've been going back and forth as to why have I been warning against many protests? And the main reason I came up with was it's too late. It's too late, I kept hearing. We've gone too far down in the line now through complacency. We've gotten too far down in the line for where protests right now, for the main part, can be productive. It gives ground rather than takes back ground. Where we've lost ground, we give more, and it goes into this over-explanation. So came up with this over-explanation feeds into the over-complicated weaponization of perspectives. And this is where, because we have allowed, through our complacency as a many, to allow a small amount of people to divide from all ends and sides, we're at a place now where when we go into over explanation, so we've got these divides, they've gone from one perspective to another. They've made sure they've laid down the seeds of divide already, so you just have to walk over them, and they're like landmines. You just have to breathe over them, walk over them, speak over them, and they blow up in your face and actually seek to nullify or even degrade, demise your argument, your point. So they've gone from race, sexual preference, biology, religion, biological distinctions, even diet, even politics, medical. I did a quick search on all those things that just popped up in my head, and I'm sure that's in no way an exhaustive list. But all of them, there is, if you look on any forums with any of those headings, there is huge debate. And we've gone so far down the line that even within those perspectives, whichever way it might sway, let's say diet, vegan or meat eater, or even now it has gone to the point where vegans are arguing with vegans. You're not vegan enough. Well, you're not eating enough meat. So we've gone too far down the line to even be safe right now to speak out our point of view, even within the circles that we naturally dwell within, the perspectives that we naturally align with. So if you're looking at where we are now, we are actually, through the spell work that's going on, through the propaganda, through the headlines, through the mainstream media, we are finishing off that spell work by continuing to protest against the narrative, but still, for the most part, in the most numbers, toe the line. So we're giving the ground by toeing the line, i.e., not recognizing that this was an issue that was brought in by a very few, race in general, a few power-hungry eaters, in general. We actually now, even within the races that they have defined, that they have manufactured, that they have idealized, we now find that even within those, we are hen fighting, we're arguing. And so even within your perceived safe place, it's not a safe place anymore. The thing is, we've gone so far down the line where race and religion, was and then maybe sexual preference. It's gone in layers. It's been gradual, but we find ourselves now so far down the line that when even diet, when even preference of nourishment is weaponized, when even biological distinctions that we come into the world with, therefore are natural, that we would align with most, even those aren't safe. They're not a safe place to protest the point. Religion being the same, we've gone so far down the line that now we find ourselves at the end of a line, at the crossroads. And in spell work, crossroads are very powerful. And the decisions that are made at those crossroads are very powerful, metaphorically and in the physical. Where medical choices, individual medical choices, and everybody knows what I'm talking about in particular, are weaponized. So they've done a good job at getting us to where we are now. And so giving them air, giving them that energy actually gives them, it's very difficult to speak. Look at this platform I'm on now, look at the various other platforms, and it's very difficult to speak. There are words now that are deliberately weaponized within our dialect, our wording. But at the same time, that's been happening for a long time, but now it is so vast that you can be have your life limited. And this should really sink in with people, that people's livelihoods, people's well-being, people's being able to be respected in the family, community, friendship circles that they dwell in, is absolutely limited by a few people weaponizing so many words now. What would seemingly be obvious words to explain your point are now bombs. And so psychologically that does a lot to us. And so we see that we've got some people blowing up. They're blowing up alongside those seeds, those bombs that have been planted along the way. And then we've got others that are retreating. They're retreating into a reclusive state. So even though things are starting to open up in the UK and people are thinking, phew, back to normal, it's nothing like normal. We are still in a state of, they've done the jobs, they've done that aspect of the spell work for now. They've still got people in prisons, down to the very fact that there is an increased stress factor in everybody, of in their subconscious of, how do I plan this sentence? There's just so even the flow of air, and this is very reflective in the next part of their spell work, the flow of air, the right to share oxygen, share your words, is being limited, because either way they've done that amount of spell work in this gestational period to really finalize some points, to really put extra locks on many, many cage doors. And the muzzle, the mask is absolutely, it's symbolic of that. So when people are saying, oh, just wear one to get along, no, it's symbolic to it. It feeds into this very clever, very evil, very, very dark magic. And so this is where we are at. And so it comes back to individuals. I, as one person, I can't even get up to 1,000 subscribers. I, as one person, cannot speak out my words and hope to sway the narrative, but I've got to try. I, as one person, cannot fix this. There is so much energy here. I, as one person, cannot, do force with force magic energetically and fix this. But I put in my flow, I put in my part, I put in my work. This isn't entirely unselfish. One, I'm building business and I want to build business on what I like doing. Two, and most importantly, actually, selfishly but conscientiously, I know that I've got to be able to look my children in the eye, and I've got to be able to prepare them for what I am living now, in that you can't show complacency, you can't give ground, And the decisions to toe the line of shutting our businesses, trusting plans, praying for a saviour, all of those things that we complacently agreed to in the many have now put us where we are at now, which feels like things are opening up. We're getting promising signs from governments. It actually feels more entrapped now than when we're in lockdown, because I can feel that there's been a finishing off, a polishing of a certain aspect of a lot of spell work, in that there is very little wiggle room. So as an individual, I've got to think, one, I've got to prepare my children for the complacency of now, what that will mean for their future. Two, I've got to do my part in the now to sway the narrative by bringing up children who I lead by example. They are not seeing me, and when they do see me, I pull myself up on it, contradict myself. They're not seeing me speak to somebody in front of them and then walk away complaining about them. Working very hard to have integrity, to have honesty, to be brave enough as a parent to instill in them a pride, because this is where it's going next. And where I don't show pride in my own ability to make decisions on the hop, to make discerning decisions that I've thought about long and hard, whether that be medical decisions for myself, whether that be medical decisions for my children, whether that be me staying open for business, in person or over the internet, whether that be my sexual preference. I've got to be able to keep that ground and maintain that ground. I've got to be able to be confident in doing so, because where we're going to next is that, and I can feel this coming, and it, again, the seeds have been being planted slowly but surely, gradual, what's the word? Monkey cat, the early bird catches the worm. They've been catching little parts of society, weaponizing them to the point where we've got very little wiggle room. So it's for me as an individual to lead by example in all of those aspects, because now where they concentrated and have concentrated for a long time on adults and weaponizing the divide between adults, they didn't really need to, and yes, they have concentrated on children, but to the extent that we see today, they didn't really need to concentrate on children too much, because leading by example, the adults were doing the work for them. You would have adult parents who were racist. You would have adult parents who would be in heterosexual relationships when they naturally were attracted to the same sex. You would have children dressed up as girls because the mother wanted a girl, or the father wanted a girl. That happens. So there's been decisions where they've done enough attack on adults that they didn't really need to directly go for quite so much the children. Where I see it going now with this next wave of spell work is the finalization and polishing off of what has been a long-term drip educational plan. They've had the seeds from the parents doing the divisional work, and where children have been naturally most immune to divide, i.e. they couldn't give a rat's arse whether they have white skin and another child they're playing with has black skin. they couldn't give a rat's arse, you know, which god their child that they're playing with prays to at night. They couldn't care less. So where they've been very immune to this, they've also had this slow dripping from the parents. What children are least immune to is the example of the parents and the destiny to repeat the history that parents lay out before them. They witness and watch and it intuitively and, like Deborah said yesterday, physically witness the leading by example for greatness or for their demise. And so I really do feel that we're going to see such a huge wave of attack again. They've planted the seeds a little while ago of in the name of goodness, in the name of compassion, we must allow children to choose their biological preference. Even that sentence in itself is ridiculous. Choose your biological preference. It's the seed of eradicating humans as we are, as we know. And so then we are looking at that next wave coming in. We've got the final, you know, polishing off of the education, the solidifying of the next generations through the education. There's something coming there. I can feel it. We've got and this sickens me, but it's happening. I can feel it. The projecting, and that next wave is coming of the projecting of adult development onto children. You know, when we're talking about these things, it seems so out there, but if you just look, if you just watch, if you just observe, they're being blatant about it. YouTubers who are openly apologizing for having relations with children, with their followers, admitting, you know, to that big P word, and they're being promoted on this platform. People just speaking their perspective, not wishing any harm to children, are being either taken off or severely impaired. And so this is where we see that, I mean, this is when we have been complacent in the past. What I'm trying to say, and I'm sorry, I'm going round in circles, because it's very deep, and it feels counterproductive to not go out there and rally up a protest every day and shout and scream, but because of how cleverly this long-term rollout of takeover of transforming a development of people, we've come to a point where it feels counterproductive, because it feels like action should be that, but action has to be now through example, being brave enough. And I can feel this coming again next time in the UK when they're saying shops have to shut up again, to say no, to feel brave enough when you know, schools, because this is where we've gotten to, and this is where we've got to start learning in the now with foresight. We've got to get connected with our intuitiveness to be able to get ahead, because while we're just rolling with the punches, we're not getting anywhere. We're losing ground, constantly losing ground. 1 second. And we are we're stuck. So the places where we can make a difference is where we choose to say no and lead by example. Because the moment we enter into, going back to my first point, and I'll leave it there pretty much because I feel like I've babbled, but I want to get this out over the over explanation. When we start to, and you see this is encouraged, and it's encouraged for this, being encouraged for this very reason, and now you see the squeeze. You let a little bit of flow, you squeeze. You let a little bit of flow, you squeeze. And, you know, if you want to torture somebody, you let a little bit of air in, you squeeze them out. You let a little bit of air in, you squeeze them out. Don't ask me why that came up, but that's what it feels like. It's words, it's air, it's swords. So on social media, you know, you see people saying, well, prove it, give me your evidence. Or how dare you say that? And you know that they're making out that you're racist. And you could actually go into essays of that, no, I'm actually protecting your children and my children, regardless of skin color, regardless of, in spite of, just, you know, another individualistic trait. The over explanation actually gives ground, because then the mob mentality takes over. Then the others who have been affected by this divisional spell work, the weaponization of words, take action. And so it's to have the confidence to, yes, speak your truth, put a statement up there, but prepare yourself to be strong enough to say, you do your research. I've done mine, which is why I put up this statement. You do your research, you know, or I'm not asking for a teacher. This is my statement. You know, you can either choose to learn from it, or you can choose to ignore it, or you can choose to waste your energy here asking me to prove it. I can't prove it to you because you don't want it to be proven. You know, simple, to be grounded enough and have enough confidence enough to put up with the fact that you're going to have large sways now within your own camps saying, yeah, you see, I told you, conspiracy theorist, or yeah, I told you, you just like to divide. And it's ironic that you would be accused of being the divider. And so it has to be leading by example. And the next wave of that, the next huge aspects of attack are coming on the children, and they're coming thick and fast. And our children are being led into places where, one, they question their biology. And I'm sorry, but a child's biology, I used to pretend to be a bird, you know, trying to fly. I used to pretend to be a horse. I used to pretend to be a cat. I used to pretend to be a boy. I used to pretend to be a girl. I used to pretend to be an Indian, a cowboy. I used to pretend to be a firefighter, a doctor, you know, all of these different roles, because the child's imagination is beautiful and vast, and under the guise of choice, under the guise of flaming choice, and under the guise of flaming compassion, it actually looks like they're offering the child more choice and more dominion over self, when actually that child is, again, these lockdowns lifting, you know, you feel like you're gaining some ground, but actually there is a much less wiggle room, because where that child's imagination one day or 1 minute could be a horse and the next minute could be a bird, you're limiting that to, no, bring it back to your body, child. Tell me, in this instance, in this appointment room, however many times you come in here, what body do you want to be in? It's very dark that we haven't, and we have helped get it here. And we helped get it here by not leading by example, by, through our insecurities, being affected by the aspect of this spell work that makes us over explain things, that then feeds into the very spell work that is divided in the first place. The over explanation isn't going to get us anywhere right now. It has to be by example. It has to be in the face of. In the face of, I will go out without covering my face up. In the face of, I will continue and fight to maintain business. In the face of, I will continue to have my child not even question, because they don't question age appropriateness, they don't question. I won't even have them question that when they're in their imagination, that does not reflect on their physical body. Their grounding, their root, their being in biology, in the biological aspect. It has to come from there, and it has to come from there with gusto. That today have you ever had those friends that and I've been accused of being them sometimes, and actually it makes me proud because it's something that I've worked on, but having certain seeds that were dropped, having certain examples given. I was a people pleaser. I was a warrior for anyone else but myself. Would stand up in defense of anyone else, but it would take so much for me to stand up for myself. And I used to look at people and try and model myself on them. And that's where I came back to my granddad first and foremost. And I'm looking at his belt now. He didn't enter in. He wasn't a wordy man. He was when he spoke, people listened. He very much so deliberately in his wisdom knew that where he was trying to affect change in politics, because he realized that was a huge machine of control over the people. Where he was trying to affect change, a lot of it was done by example. So he would walk in the room and people would naturally look to him. And it was sort of a funny saying in that, and my mum would always say, "You're so like your granddad," in that I'm a happy-go-lucky person. I love people, and I flow. And so she would say, "You're so like your granddad," because Granny used to say, "Well, Harry, you can't just turn up on people. You can't just announce yourself." Those were her sayings. "You can't just announce yourself. You didn't call first. You didn't." And he said, "Well, why? They'll be pleased to see me." He walked with the expectation of, they'll be pleased to see me. They'll be pleased to hear what I've got to say. They'll be pleased I came in for a cup of tea. Indefinitely everybody was pleased to see Harry Roberts. And then I lost that for a while. These seeds turned to weeds, turned to overgrowth, and you lose yourself on your path for a while, and you come back to it, and it's different people that come into your life that reflect aspects of my granddad in particular that I would look at and think, how did they get away with that? Because at that time I'd gone so far away from myself, so out of flow, that I would be nervous to say things. And when I was nervous to say things, you could be called out for being racist, or you could be called out for being prejudiced, or you could be called out for being cruel. Yet you would have people like the comedians in your friendship group that come in and because there's naturally no hatred behind their words, they come in and they could say the most brazen things, and people would just say, "Oh, that's such and such." And that's where we need to get back to gain back, one, this wiggle room, and then this flow, and then this movement into freedom. And it is by example. The over explanation, and I've over explained this point probably, but the over explanation of it, of these fighting grounds that we find ourselves in right now are dark, and they are a carrot. They've now turned what should be your freedom bullet into a carrot that is hanging over the snake's pit. And so this is where we take back our ground by leading by example. So lead by example today in whichever way, shape or form that you can, to yourself and then to others around you, predominantly and most importantly the children. So that's the little chat for today with where my thought went this morning, 5 o'clock this morning, the leading by example, and that's me releasing it out there for those who can gain from it. And I think I've covered what I wanted to cover. Like always, I'll turn this off and something else. I'll be, damn it, that was my main point, that was my bullet, damn it. It'll come back. So I appreciate you all. Much love. Stay balanced and stay whole, and project yourself like Harry Roberts, like my granddad. They'll be pleased to see you. And I'm pretty sure he just ignored those who weren't. So do that, you know, make it your day. I love you all. Ta-ta now.